Hello, happiness seekers, and welcome to my blog. This is George Shears, and I hope you'll find this site very helpful in creating and maintaining higher levels of happiness and deep satisfaction in your life. In keeping with the name of this blog, the particular kind of happiness that I aim to foster here is wisdom-based, rather than being dependent on the particular conditions of our lives. As the third patriarch of Zen put it very wisely and succinctly about 15 centuries ago, in the first two lines of his Verses on the Perfect Mind, quote, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences," unquote. In my understanding, what he's referring to here as the great way, in its ultimate form, is to live in complete harmony with the ever-changing reality we experience, both internally and externally. Moreover, the great way as so defined is also the ultimate way to end suffering and thereby to maximize happiness. Since the third Zen patriarch clearly implies that preferences are an impediment to attaining this kind of harmony, I'd like to expand briefly on what exactly he means by this. In using the word preferences, I'm sure his intent is to include, very importantly, all of our demands, expectations, and aversions. So, as I use this word here, please understand that it includes this entire range of preferential mind states. To whatever degree we are controlled by any kind of preferences that are discrepant with our constantly changing reality, we inevitably experience what is essentially a form of friction. And this friction, very simply, is the essence of suffering or distress. If there is no discrepancy between what we're experiencing and what we prefer, then, of course, there's no friction, and accordingly, no suffering. By being fully present and in harmony with reality on those occasions, we can savor the experience very deeply and enjoy fully the pleasure and satisfaction it entails. In order to maximize happiness, however, it's not necessary, or even skillful for that matter, to somehow try to get rid of or to banish our preferences. Somewhat paradoxically, since these preferences are very much a part of our internal reality, to demand that we not experience them inevitably creates more friction or suffering. Happiness, then, as I'm defining it here, consists in an experiential state of well-being that is essentially the opposite of suffering and consists in accepting reality just as it is. Therefore, the more we learn to let go of or decouple from preferential mind states that prevent us from accepting this reality that we're currently experiencing, the happier we are likely to be. This form of unconditional happiness is clearly very different, and in fact almost the antithesis of how happiness is implicitly understood by most people in the modern world. By this prevailing definition, happiness generally results from getting what we want, that is, from having all of our preferences fulfilled as much as possible. It's abundantly clear then, at least to me, that this pursuit of conditional happiness inevitably entails a high degree of suffering for the simple reason that we are not in control of how the universe unfolds, no matter how much we may try to be its general manager, so to speak. As a matter of fact, most of us have great difficulty even controlling that part of the universe that we experience most intimately and constantly, namely what we call ourselves. Anyone who pays close attention will quickly recognize that our bodies, our thoughts, our emotions, our moods, our appetites are very much like the weather. And much of the time, just like the weather, they are quite at odds with how we would like them to be. As I've already indicated, the Great Way very importantly includes letting go of preferences about this internal reality, just as in relation to our external reality. In fact, as a psychotherapist, I've come to believe very deeply that the best place for most of us to begin learning how to accept the unacceptable, so to speak, is to practice accepting our internal reality as fully as possible, just as it is. And that, of course, includes all of our preferences and aversions. Please understand that by accepting them, I do not mean being controlled by them. Ironically, it is only by accepting them fully that we can recognize when they are starting to take over our lives and thus be positioned to let go of them, just as we might take our hand off a hot stove. By developing this profound kind of unconditional self-acceptance, then, we can learn to alleviate a huge amount of the suffering that we commonly experience, and accordingly, it can increase our level of happiness very markedly. So in order to maximize happiness, we clearly must learn to be fully aware of whenever we are subject to preferential states or aversions that are discrepant with the reality we are presently experiencing. It is equally important to develop the skill of quickly letting go of or decoupling from these highly automatic potential causes of suffering. These two skills, in turn, are aspects of a more general master skill called mindfulness, which consists very simply in being fully aware and accepting moment to moment of whatever we experience, both internally and externally. Since mindfulness, then, is a rock-bottom key skill in developing unconditional happiness, I will emphasize it very strongly and consistently on this blog. So, as I'm sure you recognize, learning how to be unconditionally happy, as I'm defining it here, is definitely a major challenge for nearly everyone. It's highly analogous to mastering a martial art that is basically gentle and compassionate, such as Tai Chi or Aikido. And just as there are many levels of attainment in these martial arts, the same is true in mastering the art of unconditional happiness. And even a small degree of attainment in developing the requisite skills here will significantly decrease suffering and increase happiness. Moreover, there is a rapidly growing body of neuroscience research that shows how even a modest degree of mindfulness practice also gives rise to significantly positive brain changes. Very fortunately, there are now abundant online resources available to guide and assist anyone who recognizes the importance of this fundamental form of personal development and accordingly is motivated to cultivate it. My main objective then in creating this blog is to help everyone who is interested to access this treasure trove of wisdom and to utilize it as fully as possible in developing what I call wise ways to happiness. I thank you much for your time, and I earnestly hope that you will join me in this extraordinary journey to unconditional happiness. This is George Shears, wishing you all the best and saying bye for now.